Hey, friends, welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. On today's episode, I am so excited. I have Haleh Shoa, and she built a company called Picturli, where she helps people specifically organize their photos, their digital photos, all sorts of goodies. And I am so excited to have this conversation for a couple of reasons. One is that I think it's amazing the doors that being an organizer opens and how we're able to find our unique genius of how we help our clients. And she is a fantastic example of that. And then, two, I think this is super helpful for you all to learn a few tips of how to work with your clients. And so we're going to get all into the goodies, but thank you, Haleh, for being on the show.
Samantha, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to get into this. So tell us first just a hair about like your business. I know when you and I had first chit chatted for a second, it's actually a technology company that you ended up creating, right? Like because you have to keep everyone's photos together.
Yes, I mean, doing photo organization, we don't talk about the tech side of it,
Hmm.
but it's very tech heavy, whether it's going from analog to digital, then you have to get into scanning and, what type of scanners to get, because we get so many different types of media and so many different sizes and delicacies, right? I mean, you
Mm.
could get things from the 1800s that are really delicate. I mean, you could get things from the 80s that might be really delicate. And then you get into the digital aspect of it, which is, of course, that will be technical as well. And then you get into the design aspect of it, and you need technology to design it and produce it and do all that. So I don't, I do say I have a photo archiving and design studio, and I don't say I have a tech company, but it really is very tech heavy.
Yeah, no, well, and I think that's amazing because there's a lot of stuff that we do as organizers that, like I was saying a minute ago, finding our unique genius, like each one of us don't understand sometimes, or at least I didn't in the beginning, all of the different ways or avenues that being an organizer can take us and the different like there's so many different things that people do with organizing. And so, I think it's so amazing to have these conversations with people that are doing unique things. I mean, we're all unique in what we do, but yours is like extra extra unique. So how long have you been an organizer and how did you kind of get into this?
Well, I started studying with a life coach in 2015. There was several different rivers of my life that sort of conjoined in 2015. So one was I really just I had a big girl job in advertising for decades, and I wanted to be my own boss babe.
Mhm.
And so that was one. The second was that I had a lot of my photos in Kodak Gallery way back in the 1990s and early 2000s, and they went out of business. And I didn't really pay attention to the emails that I was receiving, and I lost all of my photos in Kodak Gallery. So that was one of the rivers that like sent shockwaves into my system. Another one was that I loved doing photo albums. So I just really wanted to do something where I'm preserving people's memories and doing photo albums. So it was a lot of like, when you do a lot of soul searching, like you start with one thing, and for me, it was like, I love making photo books. And then you get into it, and, the clients go, well, what about my old albums? And that was a huge need. And, I had my family left during the Iranian Revolution very suddenly, and they weren't able to take much with them except the photo albums. And so when
Mhm.
I was in my sort of 20s and 30s, I would take that into whatever ad agency I was working in because they always had really good high-end scanners. And I would take these albums and scan them, clean them up, and that was another river that sort of led to me finding and founding Picturli and what I wanted to do. So it was this conjunction of what I was good at and really
Mhm.
what fills my heart, um, which was to just do family photos and do things with the family photos, preserve them and organize them.
Yeah, and I love multiple things you said there, but exactly what you're saying of we have to be passionate about what we're doing when we start a business. If we just think we're going to copy and paste what someone else is doing, or, oh, this might make money, so we're going to be, go start this business. Can it get you there? Sure. But as entrepreneurs, what I've learned is it's about the day to day. It's about enjoying the process. It's not about this one day destination that we're going to get to and then we're going to make it, right? It's these small things. And so when we follow our heart and when we follow our passions, we truly get led to where we're meant to go and what we're meant to do to help others. And so I think that's huge of what you're doing because, again, you're passionate about it, but you're also helping with a need that I know for me, like for instance, when my grandmother passed away. So she was a wedding photographer, and this was, back in the day whenever she was like taking photos, and then she'd have to create a photo album to like show them their photos for them to pick from of what they wanted to purchase. Then she'd have to send them off to get them printed and sent to her. And it was all of these things. Well, when she went to pass away, her entire basement was photos. Like I could not even tell you how many photos were down there. The
Wow.
problem we ran into was that 90% of the photos weren't even family photos. They were these people that we were like, who are these people?
Oh my God.
Um, and so I love what you're doing because it was such a huge project to undertake on top of my nanny passing away and then then you would come across a family photo and then you'd start crying because it was personal. And I don't know, there's just so many layers to it. And so I love the fact that like you are helping people to kind of like take that off of their plate, so to speak, of the family photo stuff. Cause I know I've had clients that they don't want to get rid of the stuff, but they want the space that that stuff is taking up. So do you get a lot of clients like that that kind of have more of the physical product, but then they're like, listen, I still want to have these, but I'm sick of it being an entire room full of, photo albums?
Yeah, we do. In fact, this is the reason why we've moved 4 times in 4 years, because we get these really large collections, and that's kind of became our expertise, because we get these ginormous collections with everything in them and everything disorganized. A lot of times it is from a passing of a parent or both parents, and the adult grandkid or the adult child would end up with all these things, and it's so overwhelming and don't know what to do with all this. So yeah, we do definitely handle very large digital and analog collections of memories. And the thing is, what they end up with, it's probably 10 to 20% of what they give us. One reason is because they probably have a lot of duplicates, and chances are they have a lot of duds. Even things in albums, which typically we want to be able to save everything that's in an album because that was meaningful for whomever that made the album.
Mhm.
But a lot of times, we go to the zoo and the kids are little, and we put all the animal pictures in the albums, and because like the 5-year-old really wants to look at all that pictures of the zoo. But then when you're older, you're like, okay, I don't need a picture of I don't need to pay someone to scan it and process it and put it in the archival box when it's a picture of someone at the zoo, or pictures of the sky and the ocean in Hawaii or wherever you are. Those things become sort of menial and nonsensical to a family collection. So we heavily curate anything that we receive. We recommend families to go through what we've curated out to see if there's anything they want to keep and rescan, like to scan and put back in the collection. But depending on the needs of the client and like where they're at, like a lot of times if the passing of a parent is very fresh, like within the next last 2 years, and if especially if it was sudden, they want to hold on to as many memories as possible. So we have to work through that, as you guys know, working
Mhm.
through things of letting go with clients. But memories have a different, I mean, we're all attached to our stuff, but really attached to our memories. Um, so we walk that line with them and sort of coach them through it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's another piece of where no matter what we're helping people organize or declutter or whatever it is, coaching always seems to kind of be a piece that whether we realize we're doing it or not, we are. Because exactly what you said, depending on what's important to them, what's not important to them. And what I found with clients, and I'm sure they do this with photos too, is that they'll look at the whole like project or the whole room or the whole area and they'll be like, I want to keep that. And I'm like, well, hold on. Let's break this down and into like smaller sections and see if we really need to keep that. Because to them, it's just, oh, it's all the photo albums Nanny had. So I need to keep them all. Versus, like you said, oh, I start opening them and realizing, wait, I don't even know these people.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, in that case, we've never really gotten um, a parent, grandparent that was a photographer, in that case. And, depending on if they were a photographer to the stars, we did get one client whose dad was still with us. He worked for, a magazine that was related to basically Hollywood. And
Hmm.
he would go to every single party and he has shot everybody that ever was. And so his collection was kind of fun to go through. And it's still easy for us to curate something like that out because not every shot is what you want to keep and scan. We don't throw anything away in the studio unless our clients are okay with us throwing away the duplicates. But even then, a lot of times they're like, no, we keep the duplicates so we can send it to my siblings, But once everything is digitized, you don't actually really even need, you don't even need to keep it. We've had clients, I don't throw their memories away. If they want to throw it away, I still put it in a box and they can throw it away. I just can't throw anything away unless it's a duplicate.
Yeah. Well, and that's similar to regular organizing in the fact that, if we're in a closet and we're going through someone's stuff or like the husband's not there and like I would never walk away with someone's stuff that the person that owns that stuff is not there to look through it and be like, "Oh yeah, that can go." Right? Like I'd never be like, "Oh, well the wife said, so let me take all the husband's stuff away." And I bet it's obviously the same with that where that's not for us to decide. That's for them to choose. And I love that you give them kind of that second layer of making sure this is what you want to let go of. But I don't know. I love the fact that like you're doing this and you've built a business around it. So what are a few tips, right? Like for us that are even if we're just starting or we've even been organizing for a while, what are a couple things that like you would recommend if you were going in someone's home and you were dealing with a client that had maybe not a ton, but more than they should have. And they're telling you, oh, I want this space to now be my pantry or whatever,
Sure, sure.
you know?
Yes. I mean, so every client that we have wants to organize their entire collection. And there are some clients that, we have to take it in phases, whether it's for monetary reasons or just availability reasons. But essentially, we always start with everything in one place. So I always tell the clients, I give them a list of where everything can be. And I ask them to put everything, if I'm going to their home, because we have clients we go to their businesses, but if everything is in one place and I realize like it's too overwhelming a lot of times to put everything that you have on your dining room table, because then where do you
Mhm.
eat? But I recommend for them to do that and forego the dining room table, while they're preparing for our visit. And when we visit, we are essentially, we don't spend more than 2 hours with a client, but this is our workflow. And this has taken 8 years for me to get to a point where I don't need that much time in order to know like how much something's going to be. It's, but so you start with everything in one place. Then with every single project, we do a family tree. So I want to know who was in these photos. I want to know when they were born, when they passed, wedding dates, any other kind of important dates, engagement dates, whatever. If we find a photo of something so that we can identify it, right? if they were in the military, the years that they were in the military, if there are religious figures, what that life looked like for them, so that we can really memorialize their collection based on the information that we receive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really get to know them in the 2 hours, get to know their story. So it's a little bit different. Like my coaching with home organizers, if they want to take this on with their clients, is to take it very small chunks at a time. We have to pack it in the 2 hours that we have. But so we ask them to pull out, let's say if it's their mom or dad and they've both passed, pull out some photos of them being younger so that we can know what they look like. We can know what their parents look like in the photos so that we can identify them. And the reason why we ask a lot about dates is that we organize everything chronologically. And the reason why we organize things chronologically is because when we scan them, we rename and redate the files at the very minimum based on the decade. Sometimes we don't have the budget to go super deep, meaning like
Mm-hmm.
to do some research and figure out, is this 1953 or 54? And sometimes we could just call it mid 50s. And sometimes we just call it 1950s. So, but at least we're in the right decade, at least they're not getting a bunch of scans that are dated August of 2024 or whatever the date of the scanning is, and
Right.
doesn't give them a bunch of things to now figure out what to do, but that's the first tip. I would say in terms of working with the client is to gather everything in one place first.
Yeah. And then for me, it's super similar, I would think, because as you're talking about it, it sounds very similar to what we normally do with decluttering. But it would kind of be more of like you said, like figuring out what the duplicates are, figuring out what's important versus what isn't important. Because I bet there really are a lot of people, which I think you said a second ago, they end up with like 10 to 20% of the whole thing if it's a bunch of, like, pictures of the sky and pictures of a giraffe and pictures of and I bet a lot of us, we don't think about the fact that there are gonna be a lot of those photos in there, especially stuff from back in the day, because if anyone was like my grandmother, she took photos of everything, every deer we passed, which she was a photographer, so maybe it's different for other people, but, it just seems like we take photos of a lot of things that in the moment seemed like photo worthy, but now we have Instagram or, Facebook that we pop our photos on or we leave it in Google Photos, whatever. Back then, they had to take the time to go get them printed. So then all of a sudden they became this actual thing that now they're holding on to. And so I think that's like, I love the fact that you're going through it, but that the process is still very similar of, coaching them, like putting it all in one place and then kind of figuring out what's important and, those things that we do with our clients as organizers.
Mhm.
Because when I first read that you were a certified professional photo organizer, like it seemed foreign, but now as we're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we do with our clients. It's just with the photos and stuff instead of their actual in-person stuff. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you all actually get like projects delivered to you. And if someone, like, let's say an organizer or someone listening to this is like, you know what, Samantha, like, that's great. Thank you for the tips of how I would help my client, but I can't even think about doing that. But I have no problem passing along Haleh's information so she can do it. What does that process look like if someone's not in your city?
It really depends on what they have, what they want to do with it. But, my recommendation always is to put it in brand new medium-sized boxes and we'll send them a label, which is like a COD type label. So we can figure out how much it'll cost when we get it delivered. Definitely make sure it's insured and definitely make sure you're sending it ground. You don't need to send a 2-day air. You don't need to pay for all that. And that way it doesn't become super enormous in cost. And, we have clients all over the globe and we help organizers with their clients all over the United States. And now we're starting to venture into Canada as well. So yeah, we are global, definitely. Obviously it's much easier to help clients with their digital items. rather than their analog.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we can certainly just book a consult with me and we can walk through how that's possible and how to go from there.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and I also, before I forget, I want to mention, so you are coming in to do our December workshop, which I'm so excited about. So that way my members inside of our group coaching community can ask you all of their questions that they have around photo organizing. Because for me, I almost feel like photo organizing is very similar to like paperwork organizing. Like it's a very similar thing of, as a human, you are either you love that stuff or it is just not your cup of tea. Like, I was working with a client yesterday, and the whole session we just went through paperwork, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything because I was literally just sitting there talking to her as cuz she had, I mean, we, anytime I would try to look at a piece of paper while she was looking at a different one, I could feel her anxiety of like, wait, what's that? Hold on. So then I would have to rein myself back in and be like, nope, this is what I'm here for. I'm holding the space, I'm coaching. But I'm the type that I'm like a go, go, go kind of person. And so sitting there with her, like it took a lot of restraint for me to not just dive into the box and start looking through. But
Bet,
when it comes, yeah, but when it comes to
bet, yeah.
paperwork and photos, like, you have got to have a lot of patience to do what you
Oh,
do.
and that's why we don't actually organize with our clients, because the first thing that happens is they always pull out their favorite photo of themselves, of their kids, of their mom, and the stories will just keep going. And that is not why we're there. We're there
Mhm,
to make sure we understand their goals. But with photos, it's in a way we have to be super focused on the 2 hours that we have, because really all I want to know is, can I identify these people of every aspect, of every decade of their life? That's all
mhm.
I want to know, is just show me a picture of when you were born so I can write on the back that that was you. Hopefully you're not an identical twin. We've had that too. Um, which is so hard. I'm like, I have literally no idea. But you know, but at least, I mean, if they're twins, we know when they're born and
Mhm.
whatever. It's when we get into facial recognition that I'm like, I hope I did this right. Um, but yeah, I mean, we have to stay focused and away from family stories, even though
Mhm.
we are there to preserve the family stories. But if we get into stories, it will just like, it will never stop. And in the beginning, I did used to organize with my clients at their home because I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what to, like, I had no idea what the questions to even ask, and you can prepare all you want, but then you just never know when you get to a client's house. Like, just like you guys, even though you could see pictures of their closet or their garage or their pantry, you get there and you're like, oh, I didn't even see that corner, or whatever it is, or what their goals are, what their needs are, or what their
Yeah.
energy is like around what you are showing them, or around what they're holding in their hand. A lot of times you really have to be present with them.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
Tell me a story, like, is there a story that stands out in your mind when you were first organizing, like, in clients' homes with someone that, like, you could share that was kind of a, like, "Ooh, that was a learning curve."
our very, very first client out the gate, still to this day, our largest client, she she had a dining room table that I think fit either 18, that's how big her dining room was and how big the table was. I think she could fit like maybe 18 or 22 people. I can't remember. Like, it was enormous, enormous. And around the dining room was all these, like, those little 2x4 folding tables.
Mhm.
Um, Around it was, so the dining room table was 3 feet in, like 2 to 3 feet full of photos and memorabilia. Around the entire dining room table was 2 to 3 feet of bins of photos and memorabilia. Like, I am not exaggerating. And so when I walked in there, and oh, and she had like 3 dogs and I don't know, and many cats. And there was like fur balls everywhere. And she was an older lady. she had her oxygen tank on her nose and a cigarette in her mouth. And I thought, oh my God, we are all going to die. This oxygen tank will take all of us out. And
And
you
then
know,
and then all the photos are gonna be like the fuel for the
so, but that was my very first client out the gate. And it was, she's very
Were
strong.
were you by yourself at that point, or did you have a team already?
Oh no, I was by myself, first client out the gate. And and at the same time, I got the biggest girl job. I got an offer to run Jaguar Land Rover's global operations. Um, at the same time, I'm like, okay, so the universe is abundant right now. I have a lot of choices. And so I brought my husband in, who was already retired, but he knows how to do, he worked in the studio in advertising and actually was the scanner and did all that stuff. And thank God, Anita and Alan, they hit it off really. Like she kept going like, can I marry your husband? I'm like, if you can give him half your half your wealth, absolutely, you're welcome.
You can have him, yeah. That's amazing. So, what did you do when you walked in? Like, did you sit and sort it at her home with her? Were you like, "Oh my gosh, we gotta take this somewhere else?" Like, what did you end up doing?
There's nowhere I could have taken it. I didn't have a studio like I do now.
Mhm.
So we had to do it in her dining room. So I created a system, and it was like, okay, let's just, because it was sort of organized chaos, because she had her mother's side of the stuff and her dad's side, which wasn't that many actually. And then it was her life, with her husband. They're huge, very, very prominent family in Los Angeles. They have held many, many, many sort of public figures, fundraisers for politicians, public figures from the dawn of time. Like everybody in politics and in Hollywood were in their photos. It was really fascinating and really
Mhm.
amazing. And it was like, okay, and they had many different properties in different countries. So it was kind of like, that part was hard, because then you get into like the kids, and it's like, well, but I don't want that in my family. But it's like, but your children are in it. And that's when it becomes like, you really need to take a step back and go to the 30,000-foot level and go, okay, sometimes doing chronological doesn't work, because you have to do thematic. You have to go,
Mhm.
okay, all the pictures from their Italy villa needs to just go into one box. Like, no matter who visited, if it was the head of that country or if it was their 5-year-old, any picture in Italy needs to just go into the Italy box, and then we'll figure out what to do with that later,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like trial and error in terms of how to organize her collection. But really, at the end, she didn't even want it organized. So it wasn't really like I wanted to have an organization on Archive and Studio. But what she really wanted is for us to scan it and print it in different sizes so that she can scrapbook with it. So, because she's like, I don't know if I want this really big or really small. So we ended up just doing what she wanted. She paid us our rate. We were there 3 times a week, and that's what she wanted us to do.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot on that project that lasted 5 years.
Oh. Oh, god.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah, 5 years.
yeah. Which there's so many like takeaways from that because A, the job doesn't always end up being what it looks like in the beginning. B, exactly what you said. I don't care where you're at in organizing or what stage with the client. Sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, okay, let's reevaluate for just a minute and kind of shift what we're doing because sometimes you can't force, what is it, a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't, and then, I think for a lot of us, especially in the beginning, we think, "Oh, but that's what the client wants, so we need to force it to happen because that will make them happy." And what I've learned is as long as you have a conversation, like human to human, and you're just like, "Look, here's what we thought we were gonna do. It's not really working out the way we thought it was going to, but what about this option? Like I've thought maybe we could do it, this other way, like putting all of the villa stuff in a box versus chronological." And then normally they're like, "Oh, you're the organizer. Okay, whatever you think." And we've spent all this time stressing when they're just like, "Oh, okay."
It's very true. I mean, a lot of my clients are like, I don't like, I ask them questions. In the beginning, I would ask them a lot because I'm like, well, first, I just want to make sure I'm going to give them what they want, but also to
Mhm.
show my expertise, and it would overwhelm them.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. And you make the decision. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to make the decision, and I'm a decision maker, that's fine
Mhm.
with me. Um, and so that's like I was born to just sit around and make decisions all day. So I was like, okay, I think this is what we should do for you. And they're like, great, just let us know what we need to do and you get us to that point. And so
Yeah.
I've learned um, there's not a lot of clients who care at all about process. I don't think any of our clients care about the process. They do want to know the phases, so I talk to them about we're going to be in the gather phase and the assessment phase because we need to count what you have in order for me to tell you how much it's going to cost and what our approach is going to be. So, and then we get into the archiving phase, and then we get into the post processing phase, and then backing up and choosing a platform for them. And all of these happen by me understanding their level of technology. If they're a family that they're just not going to stop taking a lot of photos and videos, because I do tell people, like, be intentional with photos you take, go through it, clean it up. But it's really hard. Some people are like younger, especially younger clients, sort of our age-ish and younger, and
Mhm.
we just take a lot of photos. And but because a lot of us are moms and dads and have lives and businesses and a lot going on, we don't take the time to curate it and to go through it and clean it up. So it becomes really overwhelming. So
Yeah,
I have to
it's
come up
even
with this
hard for me. Yeah, it's even hard for me in my business to like I had to get because at first I was taking all of my before and after photos and like all of this stuff. I would just take them with my, phone. Well, it was already set to my personal account, which I didn't even think about in the beginning because we don't know what we don't know. And so I've got all of these clients like before photos and after photos and all of these things mixed in with my kid's first day of school and my this and my that and so then one day it hit me. I'm like, I need to like organize my photos. Like I need a Google Drive that is just for clients and then I need a folder of each client. But to the thought of setting down to do that, like with what time? Like
Yeah, you have to, as a business owner, and if you're a business that does need to take photos with your phone. In fact, I've created a workshop that I'm doing. I'm doing 4 workshops. I know this is a podcast and people might be watching this and anytime and any
Mhm.
year, but I do a lot of workshops. And one of the workshops that I do, and I will be recording and putting it on my YouTube channel, is how to have a clutter-free camera roll, especially for like real estate agents and home organizers
Mhm.
and people who do a lot of before and afters. There's a lot of tips and tricks, particularly if you have an iPhone, that you could do. But you just have to be intentional. You have to set
Mhm.
these things up ahead of time. Like you could use notes if that's something that's available to you. I think my entire business is on Google Drive, so it's really easy for us to get into a Google Doc situation and just take photos right into there and upload it to that or to a Google folder and then just
Yeah.
delete it right off of our phone. So that's what we do here. And everyone has access to the same workspace, but yeah, I mean, setting
No,
up
I
a
love that.
business is so, so important ahead of time. Like you have to think like your future self a lot of times, especially if you're a business. Like, what if I had 10 employees? Where would this go? If I were to tell someone where to put this, where should they put it? And then start working as if you are going to have employees. Because
Well,
even
and even for me, like I know for you, you have people that work with you, but even for me, I have like I never wanted to necessarily have like a team that goes in with me because I enjoy the one-on-one organizing and coaching with my clients and decluttering. Like I love that stuff. So to me, I was like, oh, I'll never be sending it to anyone. Wrong. Now I have people that help me with like a VA work or maybe posting or like there's so many times or even creating a Canva graphic or like there's so many things that now I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to send them my personal like Google stuff. So even if you don't think you're going to get there, exactly what you just said of assume you're going to have to send it to somebody at some point. Because
Yeah,
even here recently, I just had a client that had asked me if I could go back through and create a folder for her for tax purposes of all of the stuff she had donated. Well, I'd never had a client ask me to do that before. So then all of a sudden I had to go in and I'm like, man, if I had already been in the habit of doing these, I would have just been able to send her folder versus now I've got to go back through the last 6 months of working with this client and all of my photos, figuring out which ones were hers and transferring them over. And it's just, you don't want to get to that point of where it's such a big job to where you're going to have to sit down for 3 days straight just to get it done versus if you just set up, a separate thing in the beginning, it makes life so much easier moving forward.
sure. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and I love that you guys use Google Drive because that's what I use in my business. And I think that Google Drive really is the easiest when it comes to like keeping things organized digitally, especially for a business. And then it makes it super easy to have like your business stuff versus your personal. And everyone has Google Drive. Like, I don't know anyone that doesn't have Google Drive. So yeah, tell me, okay, so your workshop, we'll definitely make sure to put that in the show notes. And then we will link your YouTube channel as well on the YouTube video and in the podcast. But that way, if it's after the workshop, then the replay will be there. So people, because I think that's a really valuable piece of content and like a workshop that would be super helpful to the people that listen to this. And then there was something else. What was the other thing? Oh, you started coaching where you're doing coaching with specifically professional organizers that want to learn more about photo organization. So can you talk
Yeah,
about that?
I do coaching for clients who wanna do a lot of their own photos. We don't have a lot of that because, most of my clients are like, I don't even wanna know what you do.
Yeah.
Just do it for me, because it's so overwhelming. I mean,
Hmm.
working with your photos is just too overwhelming. In fact, I have to say, I can't even work on my photos. I have given my photos to one of my employees, and I'm like, okay, you organize it and you just let me know when you've gotten it all sort of deduped and done all that stuff. But there's so many home organizers that want to learn because you're in people's homes, you're already doing all the marketing and getting all the clients. And so adding this to your bucket list of what you offer is such a valuable, um,
As
I
like
think
an add-on service,
a
right? Like,
very, very valuable
yeah.
add-on. Yeah, but just know that you don't have to do everything. You don't have to create a technology company like I have. You don't have to even scan, but you can find a good local scanner and you can certainly help the client organize their items with just these QR. I've created a 7-step guide to organizing and archiving your photos. You can certainly use that guide. Sign up on. I'll provide the link for the show notes, but it's picturelifecurated.com. All of that stuff is on Picture Life. It's just a landing page. I thought it would be easier for people to remember picturelifecurated.com.
Hmm.
And so you can sign up for that and get the 7-step guide. And essentially, the framework is in that guide. It's not a very long document, but it gives you a nice framework. And then we can work together on what would best fit. What I work with home organizers is what would best fit your, the way you want to work and
Hmm.
what you want to do with the client, right? So
and
yeah.
and what you want to offer because I think for a lot of us, in the very beginning, we're kind of busy throwing spaghetti at the wall. We're trying to add virtual, we're trying to add this, we're trying to add that and the third. And honestly, if you focus in on the one thing and you get to know who you're working with at first, then it's a lot easier to start adding on some of these other things. It's very hard if if the business isn't even launched yet, to be like, oh, well, let me also add this other thing. If you take it one step at a time, but knowing that it's there and that you love photos, but then again, maybe you're someone that you've watched this and you're like, you know what? The idea of helping someone declutter sounds stressful to me. I love photos. Well, maybe your only service is helping with photo organization because there are organizers out there that that's what they specialize in. And so maybe that becomes your specialty and it's not even an add on. Or maybe you start doing what you're doing now, start working with clients, and then you end up with a few clients and you're like, you know what, I would like to add this on.
Mhm.
So there's
You like
multiple
it.
different ways that you can weave it in based on who you are and what you enjoy. Don't again try to force something that isn't there, but be aware of what you enjoy and what you like, and let's create that business that you love so you don't wake up every morning thinking, "Oh, I got to go to work again." Because why are we building businesses if that's what we're going to wake up thinking? Like we should be ecstatic to go to work every morning. And we are. I'm sure you are. You've built an entire business. I mean, of course it has its challenges, but overall, I'm sure you're happy with the life that you have curated for yourself because you've been intentional to who you are on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was put on this earth to be of service.
Mhm.
And, maybe we all are in a way, right? But we need to find out what is that service. How do we want to give back, right? And what does that look like for us where we can give back and make
Mhm.
something as well? Like, so it's like that circular energetic thing where it's worth something to someone.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness, this has been such a good episode. I cannot wait for you to come into the workshop in December, or come do the workshop in December inside of the group coaching community. The link for that will be in the show notes as well if you all would like to come join the community before December. So then that way you can be there, just ask your questions then. But definitely go to the show notes and in the description and make sure to follow the link to get her 7-step guide and the workshop coming out and all the fantastic things that Haleh has going on.
Thank you so, so much for having me. Tell us a little bit about your community.
So it right now we have a women, some have just started. They've started the course that I just launched and I kind of wrapped it to where you get a few months free of the group coaching community. If you buy the course, so that way we can support you as you're starting. So there's a few people just starting. We have a few people that are about 9 months to a year in that are like now consistently working with clients. And then I've also got a handful of people that have actually been doing this just as long as I have. And what I love about it is that we meet every Tuesday. It's group coaching and I run it, but there's also this like overweaved support and accountability with each other. And having people at different stages in the journey, I think is beautiful because sometimes if you're farther along, you can kind of forget where you've come from, or sometimes if you're just getting started, someone that's been there can like give you advice. And now it's even getting to the point where, because we have an app that I'm using, and so all of the women have an app on their phone and they support one another in there. And now I'm starting to see that they're even meeting like outside of Tuesdays to like, co-work with each other or help each other with coaching or accountability or support, or I don't know, like I love it. Like to me, it's everything that I wanted when I was starting my organizing business of I just want like community because it was so lonely building my business by myself. And I would go pour into my clients and then I'd come home and I'd want to like talk about it with someone, or I'd want to like get, bounce ideas. And try to talk to my husband or my teenagers and they're like, "Mom, okay." Like there was no feedback. And so having that sisterhood of just like I say it's a sisterhood of passionate professional organizers because to me that's what it is. And everyone that's in there is so heart-centered and truly, like you're saying, they just want to help. They want to be of service and they want to help their clients, but also grow their business at the same time.
I love it.
Yay. Well, thank you for asking because I know I'm like, oh, I love my community, but I try not to like, you know
No,
how it is when you're on
it's important
YouTube and
to put it out there.
yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. But yeah, perfect. Okay, well, thank you for coming on the show. And for those of you that are watching, make sure that you go do all the things in the links, that you come join the group coaching community. We would love to see you in there. And I hope you guys have a very blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you.